Hi guys, so today I'm going to do a tag video that started out as a collab video between Jamie on the Not So Ordinary Wife channel and some of her financial savvy friends. So it's called Money Stories, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And this collab video was done about 6 weeks to 8 weeks ago, so almost 2 months ago I'd say. And this is my fourth time attempting to film this video. To be part of it, so hopefully this one will work. So what it is it's just 5 questions that you have to answer, and they're just about financial decisions you have made in your life. So the first one is the best money decision you've ever made. So I had to think about this for a while because there was a long period of time where I made very poor financial decisions before I met my husband, and then we were forced into a period of time where we had to live off credit cards because of my illness. So those weren't great decisions, but yeah, so I just had to think when was the time I made a really good decision. And the one that I really came up with is our wedding. So we got engaged shortly after moving out west, probably just a few months. So that was in 2007. And then we wanted to get married back in Newfoundland, where all of our friends and family are. And so we were planning that. And at the same time, my husband's sister was planning her wedding for the summer of 2008. And just talking to her about the expense of having like 200 and some people there. And so to have a venue that's big and that meets that many people and food for that many people, it was just outrageous. And she was in a much better financial situation than us, but still was trying to find ways to trim money because it was just so expensive. So we thought, you know, that's kind of out of our price range, if you will. So then we were going to go down south, and we had some issues. I had some issues with my passport because I had to renew my passport, and they ended up putting my legal name as my married name instead of my maiden name, and this was before we got married, so I couldn't use it to fly, and there was all these issues. So then we decided, you know what, we're just gonna have a small ceremony in the city that we live in, and then go from there. So really for us, getting married was rings, a piece of paper, and me being able to legally use my husband's last name, because I had been using it for non-legal things for probably at least 5 years previous to when we got married. So that's what we did. We got married here, and for less than $1,000 we did everything, and I am talking everything. So that included my dress, which I actually had to buy 2 dresses because my first dress ended up getting stolen, and that's a totally different story that I'll talk about in a different time. But I had 8 days to buy a new wedding dress. So my first wedding dress was a bridesmaid's dress. The one I actually wore to my wedding was a grad dress, because from here down was purple and the top was white with no straps. So for some reason here in Alberta, they do their grad super early. So this was wore once, it was like rented once, and now it was being sold. So it was being sold at like 80% off. So I got my wedding dress. That included my husband's ring and my wedding band. So my husband's ring looks like it's part from my set, but actually it's not. The ring that goes with my set, that's the male, is over $1,000. So he found his, it looks identical with like little diamond chips and stuff in it. 2-tone, which is what he wanted, and he got it at a clearance sale. So that was his ring, my dress. He bought a dress shirt because he didn't wear tux. He wore a suit to our wedding, so he bought actually 2 purple shirts, one to match each of the dresses. So that was his shirt. That was our wedding commissioner, which was actually the most expensive part of us getting married. That was our cake. My cake was $30, and it was about this big around with a smaller one on the top. $30 carrot cake with no nuts because I'm allergic to nuts, and no raisins because my husband doesn't like raisins in his carrot cake. And what we did is we went on Kijiji and we found this lady who, she wanted to have a bakery way back in the day. It didn't work out, so she went into the corporate world. Did that for 20 some years, doing baking kind of on the side, and then decided in her late 40s, no, I want to go back to baking. This is what I want to do. This is my passion. So she converted her whole basement into a small bakery, but she was still building her name at that time. So her cakes were extremely cheap, but very high quality, because she wanted to get her name out there. And we've since went back to that lady for many cakes, and her cakes are still very reasonably priced. But this cake was even more reasonably priced because she was trying to get her name out there. So there's our cake. My flowers I just got from a local florist. I had a very small bouquet, and then my husband and the guy who witnessed for us had boutonnieres, and the lady who witnessed for us had a corsage. That's it. That was all the flowers I had. We stayed at the hotel where we ended up getting married. We stayed the night before the wedding, the night of the wedding, and the night after the wedding. So we got a deal. Originally it was just going to be a 3-night deal, but then when they found out that it was the wedding, then we got an even better deal because it was a package, and because we were getting married in this little room, which wouldn't really have been decorated because I didn't really spend any money decorations. They decorated the whole thing for a small wedding, had chairs that were wrapped in purple, whatever you call those things you put on seats, and they did that all for free, because no one was sitting on those seats. There was only 5 people in the room, myself, my husband, the 2 people witnessing, and the wedding commissioner. And along with that, we got wine on 2 nights and champagne on another night. Champagne on the night that we got married, so wine on the other 2 nights. And with strawberries dressed up like bride and groom. Strawberries that had like writing on them like congratulations, best wishes. And then the other one I think was a cheese, with the red one I think came with like cheese and crackers or whatever. But that was free. And this also includes me legally changing my name on my license, on my health care, on my social insurance, and there's one other one I cannot remember what it is for the life of me. And plus that allowed us to register our marriage. So yeah, that's pretty much everything. So everything was done for $1,000, and I mean, one of us couldn't fly in the summer to Newfoundland and back for $1,000. Like, it was like about $3,200. Like, we'll say when we went to his sister's wedding in 2008, it was about $3,200 just to go home. So like, it was just outrageous. But what the craziest thing about it was, and where it really became money saving, but we still got to have a bit of that family piece, is shortly after we got married, so in May 2009, Brad's brother got engaged, and his wife comes from a very highly Catholic family. She's not overly Catholic, but she's from a very Catholic family. And when her grandmother found out that they were engaged, she didn't want them to live together, didn't want them to be having any babies, that sort of thing, until they got married. And she didn't know, but they actually were already living together. So it became like, we need to get married sooner rather than later, so that her grandmother could feel comfortable with it. And she's very close to her grandmother. So they actually decided to get married in October of 2009. And they got engaged, I think it was right before we got married, like maybe April. So anyways, we were going home for that because we were standing in the wedding. So we went home, we went to Edward's wedding, it was beautiful. And then we, like we always do when we go home, we stay for like 2 to 3 weeks, just because it's such a far way to go. We're going pretty much from one coast to the other. And so our family, like Brad's mom and his dad and his stepmom, said, like, we're gonna have a little party for you, a little reception. Like, you guys didn't have a reception. We're like, okay, like, you don't have to do that, but okay, if you want to, that's great. So we went, and we were supposed to be going to his mom's house. So we went to his mom's house, and no one was there except for his mom. And we're like, where's everyone? She's like, oh, we decided to take you out for dinner. I go, okay, took her out for dinner. So we went with her, and we went out for dinner. So we thought. And we're driving, and we're in the area where we grew up. So it's outside of St. John's Mount Pearl. It's in the CBS, Newfoundland. And so we're driving, and then if you know anything about the Bay Bulls area, there's a point where if you turn down one road, the only thing you can do is go down to the coast, and that road ends up ending, and that's where you go whale watching, a lot of the whale watching and stuff that's close to St. John's. So his mom takes this turn, and we're like, what are you doing? And she said, we're just going to go out for dinner down at your cousin's, because Brad's cousin actually owns one of the whale watching places down in Bay Bulls, and they also have like a restaurant thing, and we're like, oh, we looked at each other, that's kind of weird, but okay, like maybe we're going there because it's cheaper, like, so, you know, maybe they got the family that owns it to agree to like give the food cheaper or whatever. So we walk in to there's like a restaurant, is like one building that's a restaurant that has the gift shop in the bottom, but the building beside it is like a boat, I don't know what you call it, like they do a lot of the boat races and stuff out of there. Anyways, so we were going to go into the restaurant. She's like, no, come over here, I want to show you something. And we go in, surprise, there's my family, there's his family, there's family there from Ontario, there's family there from Nova Scotia, there's family there from Ireland, from London. Like, it was amazing. And my family and his family together had planned this big surprise reception for us. So we end up getting married for $1,000, less than $1,000, everything included. And then we ended up still getting to have the family reception with our family, and it didn't cost us anything because our families decided to do this as a joint surprise for us. So by far best wedding or best money decision ever made. 12 minutes to explain it, but it's the best money decision we ever made because we ended up with both what we wanted. We wanted a wedding where we could, you know, say we're legally married and I could change my name and all that sort of stuff. And we wanted the family piece, but it's so expensive. And like, how do you say which cousins and which aunts and uncles like that you invite? You have to invite them all, right? And then family, friends, and because it's such a small community that we're both from, that it was just going to be really big. And this thing ended up being, I think in the end, like, so they didn't have an actual meal. They had like just like buffet style all throughout the thing. And I think over the whole time there was almost 300 people that came through. So like, that's a lot. So if we would have to do a sit down meal for 300 people, like that's crazy. So anyways, question number 2, worst money decision you've ever made. And this is probably, it's kind of interesting. It's not an actual money decision we made, but it's a decision that we made that affected our finances. So like I was saying earlier in this video, there was a period of time where my husband and I had to live off of credit cards because I was very ill with my mental health. And so that would be between 2002 and 2004. During that time, I worked very little, and then I was on disability. But I was on disability at a lower rate because I hadn't got enough earnable hours for the government to give me the full amount of money. But we didn't tell anyone that. We just told everyone, like, yeah, I'm on disability. Brad was working 2 jobs and looking after me. How he did that, I have no idea. But yeah, we're making enough money, so we were living on our own and stuff. And the worst financial decision I think that at least we've made as a couple, because I made horrible ones before I met him, like I said before, was not telling people about that struggle, not telling people how little we had and how much we were struggling, and not asking for help, because both of our families would have offered help had they known, but how are they supposed to know if we don't tell them? So in the end, we ended up having to move into Brad's mom's basement suite, and we did that rent-free. We did pay for some food, but a lot of times we ate with her because she lived alone, and so really we just kept our car on the road to keep my husband going to work, and then by that time me going to programming for my mental health. And yeah, we pretty much just had to pay for the car. So keep the car insured, keep some gas, have a little bit of food. Like we paid no bills, like no utilities, no rent. And I don't know if we would have asked sooner, we would necessarily would have got that sooner, but I mean, there could have been ways to go. We were spending $1,500 a month plus utilities during this time where I wasn't working, and I was just getting like 50% of my income from the government, and I had been working in nonprofit like I pretty much have my whole entire career. So 50% of what I was making was nothing, really. Like it was very, very little. And so that's probably the worst decision we ever made, was not being honest about how much we were struggling, because in the end it's our credit card debt that ultimately made us have to move out here and away from family. Because by the end of 2000, so February 2004 is when we moved there, and I was started my programming and stuff like that. By the end of 2004 I was back to work full time, and I've been back to work full time ever since. And when we were in Newfoundland, so 2005, 6, and in 2007 when we made the decision to move out here, both of us were working 2 jobs to try to pay down the debt, and it just wasn't working. The minimum wage is lower there, so what we were getting paid was lower. We had so much student loan debt that we were drowning in it, because neither one of us were in school by 2007, so we were supposed to be paying it all back. It's just so much, and that's why we ended up having to pick up pretty much just what we could fit in suitcases, bring our 5 cats that we had at the time, fly across the country to somewhere where we know no one, we have no family, to jobs that we didn't know if we were going to like, just so that we could pay off, because we get paid more for the same type of work, so that we could pay off our debt. I'm glad to say that we are now debt free. So this is 8 years later. We've been debt free for almost a year. So it took us about 7 years, but we had to do debt consolidation. We almost had to go bankrupt, but we did debt consolidation, along with having to do a whole lot of financial literacy stuff, which at the time was very overwhelming, but it's very, very helpful information about how, like, you can save even if you're making very little money. Like, even if you're saving a little bit is more than nothing. A lot of stuff about credit cards and the rates, and how credit cards are not necessarily a good thing, and how line of credits are better than credit cards, and just the whole thing. We learned to budget, we learned tons of stuff, and amazing. So 7 years later we were debt free. So we're sitting 8 years later, and we're debt free, except for we're about to buy a house, build a house, so that will obviously put us back into debt as a mortgage. We own both of our vehicles. My husband's about to upgrade his vehicle back to an SUV, because we don't have one anymore, and we're going to be able to pay for that in cash, and it's going to be brand new. So just amazing things. And we do have a few friends out here now. We still have no family. I would love if someone in our family would move out here, but but yeah, so that's probably the worst decision we made. So number 3, most embarrassing financial decision by far is our coach chair sets. So since we've been out here 8 years, we've had 4 sets, including the one that's behind me. So we moved out here with one that used to be my grandparents, and so it was probably pushing 30 years when we moved out here. So we had it for 2 years of being out here, and it was just getting old. Like, it was just falling apart. Like, it was, creeping up on probably 35 years. So it got a lot of good wear from my grandparents. My cousin had it, my sister had it, and then we had it in Newfoundland, and then had it here. So it's a coach and a love seat. No, sorry, a coach and a chair. I apologize. So that was the first set. Then we went to Leon's, which is supposed to be Canada's best, furniture store at best prices, whatever. And we bought Chesterfield and a chair. That lasted us a year, and just after the year warranty was done, it completely broke. Like, the legs on the Chesterfield broke. The springs were starting to come up through the coach. Okay, so we need to get another one. So this would be our third one. And we didn't go somewhere different. We went back to Leon's. We were like, okay, you know, it wasn't the high-end stuff, so we'll get something middle of the road this time. We can afford this. So then we get a chocolate brown, full length, like actually we had it in this house, so it was the full length of that wall. And then down here was a chaise, I think that's what it's called, like it makes the L shape. We had that for 2 years, and it was just completely squatted. Like the cushions were squished, and these cushions you couldn't unzip and try to put new fabric in, or not fabric, sorry, new foam in. It was like falling apart, like absolutely falling apart. So it was all squished, and it had like the back cushions like that one does, and they were all condensed down, and those you couldn't replace, and it got to the point that you were sitting on the frame. So in 2 years. So our fourth one is the one that's behind me, and we've had that for just over a year, or no, about a year and a half, and this needs to be replaced. So this is doing the same thing. Cushions are all squishing down. Like, we didn't learn. Like, it's so silly that we did not learn. We keep buying the same style, or the same like fabric and the same filling, but not getting any, like, it's just ridiculous. And every time we pay a little bit more and a little bit more. So it's a little bit crazy. So now we'll be getting on to our fifth coach at some point. We've kind of accepted this one. If you see how there's blankets there, that's because you're sitting on the frame. If you don't put that, you need to put more padding. And these ones we've actually changed the cushions in, and it's done very little. So we were going to be getting, or hopefully we still are getting, a coach and love seat. That was my mother-in-law's. If you guys don't know, my mother-in-law has passed away, and I am going to do, she passed away in May, and I am going to be doing a video all about her in a little bit. But anyways, she passed away, but this has been in storage for a year and a half-ish, and she had to move out of her house. And it's in perfect condition, and she had it for about 10 years, but perfect condition because she bought good quality, a good quality couch with good quality cushions, with good quality fabric, on and on and on and on. And why we didn't learn after 4 coaches, I do not know. But we're having trouble getting that shipped up here from Newfoundland. The cheapest we can find is $3,500, which it's not worth $3,500. So why would we pay that to ship it? So hopefully we'll get it shipped. I'm not panicking because I would like to just keep this until we move, and then we move into our house, and then just have that one delivered. Like, that would be perfect timing if I could. And in fact, if we get it up here for a good price, and I can store it for a good price in pods. I don't know if everyone has it everywhere they live, but the big white, the company's called Pods. But you can rent like a part of one, so I'm hoping, and if we get it up here before, we just rent that and then do the move, because the move it in here would be a pain in the butt. But that would all depend on how much it costs and how much it costs to get it up here. If not, we are going to go, and we are going to probably not go to Leon's, probably going to go to the Brick, which is Canada's other really big furniture store, and we're going to buy one very similar to what my mother-in-law's was. The one thing I don't like about my mother-in-law's is that it's green. But whatever, you deal with it, right? Like, you're not going to be like, oh, well, it's green, I'm not going to take it. Because you can have it reupholstered, you could put a blanket over it, you could accept the fact it's green. And depending on what room we put it in and how we paint in our new house, we're going with a lot of pastels, and it's like a pastel green, so it might just work anyways. So yeah, that's definitely our most embarrassing, because, like, you know, you buy one bad one. Why would you buy, like, you pay more money, but you get the same, it made it the same construction. Like, why we did that, I don't know. So that is definitely our most embarrassing. Most expensive / stupid thing you ever purchased. Now, I'm not going to say this is stupid, but it was very expensive, and it really didn't benefit me a whole lot, and that's my BA. And before you go freaking out saying, oh my goodness, education is important, absolutely. I learned a lot in my BA. My BA just did not cut it when it came to moving forward with my career, I had to go back to school and incur a whole lot more debt, or what could have been a whole lot more debt, because I eventually went course by course. So what happened is when I first graduated high school, I really wanted to become a social worker, which if anyone knows me and have watched my channel, that is actually what I am currently. However, there was a long journey in between. So I wanted to become a social worker. So I was going to go to Dalhousie in Halifax, and you can't apply for social work right out of high school. You have to do a foundation year. And that's fine. So in that foundation year, I fell in love with psychology and decided to do a psychology BA. So with a major in psychology, a minor in women's studies. I learned a lot of amazing stuff. I mean, a lot of the roots of psychology, well, all of the roots of psychology are going to be the same. But I learned that and then couldn't use my BA for anything. I would have had to do my honors and do my master's. And now this is like 10 plus, or more than that, 15 plus years later. And when I took psychology courses, when I did my social work here in Alberta, I mean, the foundation stuff is the same, but the cutting edge, the stuff that you're learning about what psychology is now, how to counsel, all that stuff, it's totally different than what it was 15 years ago. And my women's studies was very, very interesting, and it did give me a great perspective on women's issues and how they have affected women over time, more than what I knew just being a woman and going through the Canadian school system. And I did get to learn a lot about something that became very prevalent when I moved out here. And that is, I did start my journey on learning about Indigenous women and how they were treated by the Canadian government and the residential schools and the 60s scoop and all those things that I've now continued to learn about once I moved out here. Because in Newfoundland, there's two main groups of Aboriginal people, but they live in Labrador, and when they come down to Newfoundland, they really don't want to be recognized as Aboriginal because they were treated so poorly by the Labrador government when Newfoundland and Labrador had two different governments. So that, for my women's studies, was very helpful. But really, the BA in women's studies, or with psychology and women's studies, there was nothing I could do with that, like career-wise. So I went $60-some thousand in debt to get that degree. For what? Right? I needed to do more schooling. So what ended up happening is, because I couldn't use that, I ended up having to go do 2 diplomas in order to be able to work. So those I also did on student loan. So this is this is my student loan debt that I was talking about earlier. Then my husband had, by this point, had over $100,000 worth of student loan debt because he wanted to become a doctor, went to school, did organic chemistry, and realized he wasn't going to be able to hack that for 5 different levels because he could barely cut it at the entry level, which is crazy to me because my husband is insanely smart, like Mensa smart. But anyways, so then he decided to switch to his love of English. So he did a BA in English and History. He really loves teaching, so then he did his teaching degree. He did his honors in English and then his teaching degree. Then he taught for a couple of years. Then he decided that teaching was not where he wanted to be, or not teaching in the traditional sense. So he went back and did his schooling for computers, computer science, and network engineering. So yeah, a lot of, I think he did all of his on student loan. So all in all, his was over $200,000 in student loan when we're done. So I did my BA, then I did my 2 diplomas, one in sex and drug counseling and one in proficient and reoccurring mental health. And that allowed me to start working in the industry. And so then when I moved up here, I've always still had that burn to be a social worker. So when I moved up here, I found out that you could do social work part-time in the evenings. I was like, what? This is amazing. So I did that, but at that point, I started doing, if I didn't have the money, I didn't take the course. So I paid cash up front for every single course, so no student loan. So I incurred no more debt. So I did my diploma, my bachelor, my master's that way. I did my harm reduction certificate that way through York University out of Ontario, but I did it online. And I did it all cash money. If I didn't have the money, I didn't have it. I didn't take the course. And so it did take me a little bit longer to do my diploma, because there were some times where I couldn't afford the $1,000 between the course and the books, and I was refusing to put it on credit or get a student loan. So that is my most expensive purchase. I wouldn't call it stupid, because I did learn a lot just from being in university, and I did learn a lot from the courses, like I said, especially the women's studies stuff, and the early psychology stuff. So when I had to retake that for my social work, it was easier because I remembered it from before. Because I don't know if you've seen a video with me talking about this, but I have a learning disability called dysgraphia. So whenever I can have pre-existing knowledge on something, it's great, because it makes the learning easier if I already have some of the knowledge. So the fifth and final question is, once I was so broke, so I have two short stories. One before I met my husband, and one with my husband. So before I met my husband, I was so broke I lived in a car that wasn't insured, that wasn't registered. I honestly don't know who it belonged to. It was an abandoned car that I got in a very shady way. Got the keys to in a very shady way. So I used to just put enough gas in it so that I could move it every couple of nights, so that I wouldn't get caught by the police, because it's illegal to sleep in your car. I used to park it at like hospitals, like the back of the parking lot, or places that were open all night, so that it wouldn't look funny that the car was there. And then I would just sleep in the back seat so that no one could see me. And I did that for over a year. So my trunk, I had a small cooler that I would, whenever I could buy ice, or in the winter I would use snow for any food that was given to me, or that I could find, or that I could maybe possibly afford to buy. But during that time I was highly addicted, so all my money pretty much went into my addiction. And then the front seat, the driver's seat, I left normal so that I could drive. The other side was like where I put like a rack, not a rack, like a, what would you call it, like a clothesline, and so I could hang my clothes, because I just hand washed them, right, whenever I had access to water and soap. And then the back, I just had a bunch of pillows, some sleeping bags, some other blankets, because I mean, where I was living got down as low as like probably -30 in the middle of the winter, and so I had to try to keep myself cold or warm. So that's my I was so broke story. And then my husband and I, during that 2002-2004 time that I talked about, we actually, how we fed ourselves for probably at least 6 months, if not longer, was once a week on Saturdays, this restaurant, fast food restaurant called Mary Brown's Chicken and Taters. It started in Newfoundland, but now it's all across Canada. There's a ton of them out here in Alberta. I don't know if it's went into the States yet, but essentially it's like Kentucky Fried Chicken. So every Saturday they would have a family deal where you get 12 pieces of chicken, 2 large salads, and taters, and we would scrounge the money together every week to buy this, and that's what we would eat for the week. Now, you know, 12 pieces of chicken would technically work out to each of us having 1 piece of chicken for 6 days. So on the 7th day we're hungry again, but the problem is this chicken doesn't stay good. Cooked chicken doesn't stay good for a week. So we would eat the bigger pieces at the beginning, and then as the days went on, we'd eat 2 little pieces, like the wings or whatever. And yeah, it still left us hungry for 2 or 3 days a week. And then we would pretty much not eat during that time, or my husband would buy like bread and he'd eat like toast all the time. But at that time I didn't know I was gluten intolerant, but I did know that bread made me sick, so I couldn't even do that. So then it was more relying on food bank and stuff like that. So that is the 5 questions. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I apologize that it's long. And yeah, give it a thumbs up and sort of subscribe to my channel. If any questions about anything I talked about, please leave them in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to explain them better or elaborate more on them. If you'd like to do this video, please go ahead, and then please just leave me the link down below so I can go and view it over on your channel. So that is all for right now, and I will talk to you guys soon. Have a great day, guys. Bye bye.